Hello, everyone. My name is Bellinda Gosdanian. I'm a clinical psychologist in Montreal, Quebec. I've been in private practice since 2002. I am active in the Quebec Psychology Board and the Canadian Psych Association, and I'm currently the Vice President of the Armenian Medical Association of Quebec. Most importantly, to tell you today, there are no dual relationships or conflicts of interest for me to disclose as it relates to this conference. There's a lot of information for me to cover. I'm going to try to truncate it. I apologize if I'm moving quickly. The important thing really is that this information is out there and that we're all thinking about it. And if anyone needs anything related to this presentation, any of the information, please email me at the email that you see right there, bgosdanian@gmail.com. So we will jump right into things. All right, so an overview of post-traumatic growth versus resilience. Resilience according to 4 different aspects. What can we do to help develop resilience in children and teens? Examples of activities for children to build resilience in PTG, and a brief question and answer period. Okay, so as we can see here, the light green, you have a resilient person who experiences trauma, has some suffering, has the internal and external resources, and then goes back to their baseline, which is resilience, okay? That's what most people are experiencing. Most people don't end up with post-traumatic stress disorder, right? Most people experience lots of different kinds of events that are considered traumatic for them, but because of their resilience, they bounce back. The dark green, we're talking about something a little bit different. So you've got the resilient person who experiences trauma, they suffer, there's internal and external resources there. They do the work to get through to the post-traumatic growth part, the PTG, and then as a result, they develop more resilience. All right, that's sort of like the goal. We want people to be resilient to begin with. We want them to find meaning from their trauma, and then we'd love for them to be even more resilient. The yellow, it's a low resilient person. They experience a trauma, they suffer more maybe than some of the other categories where they were resilient. But because they've been provided internal and external resources, or because they develop them or it's facilitated, they can still develop post-traumatic growth, the PTG, and they then begin to develop some resilience. So the point I think with number yellow, with the yellow column that I would like you to take home is that it's never really too late to develop post-traumatic growth and to develop some resilience. So as long as some support and the internal, external resources are there and are facilitated, even if you start out with low resilience, it still can be developed. Now, the pink category, the pink column, low resilience, trauma, suffer more as expected. And because there are no internal or external resources, we shouldn't be surprised that we see decreased resilience and complex trauma that gets developed. All right, so the question often is, you have 2 children, they experience the same trauma, one adapts and reports to be functioning well, and the other doesn't adapt to new circumstances. There's a poor level of functioning. What's going on? What is the explaining factor that makes one child turn out one way and the other child turn out the other way? So that is explained by resilience. So the question is, how do we have our children respond like this duck here, right? How do we help them sort of shake off the water from themselves the way this duck is shaking it off their feathers? So it doesn't mean that the child doesn't experience distress and turmoil and suffering. It just means that they're able to go through it. They're able to go through it and they're able to adapt. So looking briefly at history, since millennia, resilience has been covered in the literature, dating back to spiritual traditions and philosophical traditions. Later, it gets touched upon in psychology. There's positive psychology movement that gets made and begins to, start to ask these questions related to mental health and wellness. And then Rudder, Garmezi, and Werner their research yields 3 findings that are very applicable today to our concept of resilience. And those are that resilience is not just psychological, like they're not just psychological traits, but the ability to adapt with right resources. And 2, resilience is not just being brave in face of adversity, but recovering and maintaining behavior despite distress. And 3, this is from Werner, resilience can be defined as the ability to work well, play well, love well, and expect well. So we will be moving on again. Individual characteristics compared to a dynamic multifactorial process. This shift got created as people realized that it wasn't just a quality that people had or didn't have, that it was a collection of characteristics and that they were time dependent. So depending on when and what was going on in a person's life, they might or might not have been resilient. So that it was dynamic and it could change. And that it was also involving protective factors that involved family, social environment. So very different than the way it was seen before. All right, so it's not a fixed thing. It's impacted by multiple things. And so now we will move towards different aspects of resilience. So we have the cognitive, emotional, interpersonal, and physical, all interdependent, all affecting one another. We are going to jump right into the cognitive. So cognitive and positive psychology, both offering more positive, constructive ways of thinking, trying to change people's perception of things. And so the important point here with cognitive is that how you react depends on what you are thinking. Your thoughts about what has happened are more important than what has actually happened. So trauma is not necessarily what happens to you as much as it's what happens inside of you as a result. So there's lots of different useful techniques in cognitive and positive psychology, a lot of exercises, and I can share any of them with you. Just let me know by email. It would be my pleasure. On the flip side of changing the negative to the positive psychology has brought on one thing I would like to mention, that the way you think about positive events in your life is incredibly important. How you savor the good, how you appreciate the good. Are you able to recall the good? Do you do something with that memory and experience? So this is also extremely important in terms of its impact on our mental health. So looking at emotions, emotional regulation is an integral component in resilience for younger children. This is done via attunement between the parent or the caregiver. Attachment is very, very important. Independence comes slowly for children and for teens. It's a gradual process. So needing an adult or, the attachment figure to be able to practice emotional regulation and to set that example is extremely important. Looking at Marshall Linehan's DBT model, like intervention models, there's a lot in there for helping with emotional regulation. Emotional regulation is very important for resilience. I won't say more. I know I'm rushing. Excuse me for that. We will move on to the interpersonal. So when resilience is seen as a construct that is dynamic, like we spoke about earlier, and interdependent and fluid, then we can appreciate that it requires social support and connection in order to function within the adaptive mechanism that was intended for humans. So children are developing the need to connect with parents and caregivers in order to feel a deep sense of safety in the world. We will move on. Once again, physical, very basic, but very, very important. So the physical health, sleep hygiene, nutrition, healthcare, exercise, these things are key. Without them, resilience is kind of like lopsided. There are physical stuck points that get created that create barriers to resilience. Along the lines of physical, more psychophysiologically, psychiatrist Dr. Stephen Borges and LCSW, I believe she's an LCSW, Deb Dana, have done a lot of research in polyvagal theory which I guess is described as the science of safety. And their work is amazing for working with clients and kind of understanding what the nervous system is doing in relation to the information that comes in from the outside world, particularly in contexts of trauma. So as you can see up in the green, neuroception of safety, the brain is taking in, their system is taking in information. Am I social, engaged, and connected because I feel safe? I'm in the green. Or is this neuroception of danger? Am I mobilized to do something? It's fight or flight. We see a lot of our clients in this. And then when they're shut down, immobilized, collapsed, helpless. And obviously, when we're in those yellow and the lower states there, it's very difficult to practice resilience. So trauma for polyvagal theory, the definition of trauma is that people are in a constant disrupted state of connection. So that green zone up there is constantly disrupted. So our job in building resilience is to help people stay in that green zone. Okay. Really quickly, because we are running out of time, let me check. Okay. Dr. Ginsburg wrote this book, Building Resilience in Children and Teens. It's a great book, published by the American Academy of Pediatrics. He lists the 7 C's. The bottom 2 are my C's that I added. I like them because they all lined up as C's. I will just very briefly go through them. Okay. So competence, confidence, connection, character, contribution, coping, control, and creativity and compassion. It's killing me that I don't have more time to go into all these, but I can provide any information, hard copy, whatever, if you want, of this material to you. The most important thing I think I could say, because we all kind of know what these C's are, we know what these words mean. The questions that Dr. Ginsburg provides in his book, I think that's where the mechanism of action is, because he'll ask particular questions for the parent or the caregiver to think about related to every single different C. And there's a series of questions. There's too much to mention here right now, but those questions, that's the pivotal point where you say, okay, this is what I need to do to start to try and help my child or this child feel, experience more competence or confidence or whatever. Okay. Just the creativity part, I just want to say the 8th one there is the context in which all the above C's it's the playground where they can all just come out. So creativity being such an important place where kids can exhibit all of the above there. Art has always been an essential form of self-expression for children, and we should really utilize the fact that as Armenians, we often pride ourselves. We know how creative we can be in the world of the arts, and we should take advantage of that piece. For compassion, self-compassion, Kristen Neff, a professor of human development at the University of Austin, Texas, has done a lot of research in this area. Sorry, I'll just go back. And she basically talks about self-compassion as a way of relating to yourself. It's different than self-esteem. It's more spacious. It's more gentle. And it's about really being loving with yourself as you would with others. Self-compassion has time and again, you can check the research studies, lots and lots of literature on how it is positively correlated with mental health. So now moving on to some examples of creative and artistic activities for children and teens. There's a place called Judy's House in Colorado, and it is a treatment center for children that are grieving and going through bereavement. And it has 3 different activities that they talk about that I think are just beautiful activities. I'll try to summarize them quickly. So after the storm, kids are given a picture with a storm cloud and a rainbow. They draw, write, or talk about the hardest part of their experiences in the storm cloud. And in the rainbow stripes, they write about ways that they got through this difficult time. And at the bottom of the rainbow, they write or draw how they look right now, how they feel right now, and what they expect in the future. So the next one is As I Grow. And in As I Grow, children are given a blank picture of a tree trunk with roots and a trunk and the beginning of the branches, or they can outline their hand and arm sort of upside down, and these can be the roots and that can be the trunk, and they can make some branches, or they can just draw their own tree completely. And on the roots, they write about the people or the experiences that have kept them safe and grounded. And the tree trunk, they write about the people experiences that have shaped and affected their growth, including the trauma and loss experiences. And they can make holes or carvings in the trunk. And on the branches, they write about what they hope to do with their lives, ways to honor the person who died, or details the paths or the branches that will help them reach their goals. And they can do that in the details of the leaves, the fruits, the seeds, the flowers. And lastly, in Helping Hand, children trace their hands and draw and write messages to other children to reflect on their growth. And they give back by sharing their own wisdom. They write words of hope and encouragement, and they give advice. So 3 really beautiful exercises that I am very impressed with. The work of Judy's House. You can look that up. That is related to some post-traumatic growth in children literature, which is cited right here by Kilmer, and all in the Journal of Orthopsychiatry. So in conclusion, I'd like to quote Gabor Mate, that first the world develops our minds and then the mind develops the world. So the development of the human baby takes more time than any other species. So the time is required for our emotional development to solidify and to create an internal world that reflects our own emotional experience. So when we're seen, heard, and loved, then we can see, hear, and love other people. So this in turn fortifies one's resilience. So if my emotional needs are met, then I can develop resilience in the world. So connection creates love, disconnection creates trauma, and trauma creates disconnect. So in closing, I think it's necessary, absolutely necessary, to mirror our hopes for our children and teens, our literal children and teens, our children, our community's children, our children that we're working with. So we're all of the children. As the adults in this world, we have to ask ourselves if we have developed our own resilience. And if so, have we been modeling resilience? Are we equipped to really hear and see the children around us? Because behind every child that is not resilient, we know there's likely to be an adult that is struggling with their own resilience. And we're the essential part of their resources and cannot extract ourselves from the equation of children's and teens' resilience and growth. So trauma and disconnection are reciprocal agents, and they both feed on one another. Disconnection violates our safety in the parts of our lives that we cherish. But on the flip side, resilience fostered through love and connection can help us survive and, moreover, to thrive. So I want to just show you real quick some of the references, and then just have it be open for questions. And so the questions will be answered by me or Dr. Gosdanian, Dr. Kuyumjan, and thank you for listening. Like I said, I'd be happy to provide any other resources for anyone interested. Thank you.